All right, so welcome to another deep dive. Today we are going to be looking at something pretty interesting. I think it's a YouTube video from the Next Level Soul podcast.
Okay.
And this is an interview with Debra Silverman.
Interesting.
She is an astrologer and psychotherapist.
Okay. A psychotherapist, too.
Yeah, so we're going to be taking a look at some of her predictions for the near future. From like 2025 to 2030.
Gotcha. So like a 5-year kind of outlook from her.
Yeah, and she does a really interesting life reading for the host of the podcast.
I see.
So we'll kind of use that to springboard into some of the bigger concepts that she talks about.
Sounds fascinating, right?
Yeah.
So Debra Silverman, what makes her stand out to you as an astrologer?
Well, I think one of the things is that she's a psychotherapist.
Right, you said that.
Yeah, so she brings this like really grounded human element to it,
Yeah.
you know?
Uh-huh.
It's not just like gazing at the stars. It's like, how do these planetary alignments actually affect people, like on a psychological
Impact their behavior.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Gotcha. And one of the things she talks about is like right off the bat, you know, she dispels any of this like kind of mystical fluff
Okay.
by saying astrology at its core, it's pure astronomy.
Interesting.
It's, you know,
So like mass and...
yeah, it's like a precise, you know, mathematical snapshot of where the planets were when you were born.
like a blueprint.
Yeah, like a blueprint. And she
Okay.
says it's the interpretation of that snapshot. That's the art form.
Okay, so she separates those two things,
Yeah.
like the hard science and then the art of interpreting it.
Exactly. Yeah. And note, like, complicated jargon. She really emphasizes, like, plain English.
I like that.
You know, just trying to decode your, like, personal cosmic blueprint.
Uh-huh. So,
Yeah.
so she does a reading for the host of the podcast.
Right. Yeah. And so his name is Alex.
Okay, Alex.
And one of the first things she points out in his chart is he has Sun conjunct Saturn.
Sun conjunct Saturn. Okay.
Yeah. And basically what this means is that he's incredibly driven.
Driven. Okay.
Yeah. So like a workaholic.
Workaholic. Oh, wow. So she gets that right away just from
Yeah. She's like, oh, you're a workaholic.
from that one conjunction.
And a strong sense of responsibility, you know, high standards.
I see. So somebody who's like probably hard on themselves.
Potentially, yeah. Yeah, she
A
talks
lot
to
of
him.
self-discipline.
Yeah, a lot of ambition, a lot of discipline.
Gotcha.
But also maybe having to watch out for this like need to be in control all the time.
Right. Always got to be the one running the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So then she also mentioned that he has Virgo rising.
Virgo rising. Okay. So how does that add to this whole picture of him as a person?
Well, it kind of adds like another layer of practicality to that.
To every discipline.
Yeah, to that very like rounded Sun-Saturn energy.
Oh, okay.
And she describes people with Virgo rising as often being kind of old when young.
Old when young. What does that even mean?
Yeah, like kind of serious.
Oh, I see.
Maybe taking on a lot of responsibility early on.
Gotcha.
And then she says they have the potential to become young when old.
Oh, I like that.
So it's like things maybe lighten up.
Earn their freedom later on.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
So in Alex's case, it's like this double dose of this like get it done mentality early in life.
Right.
But then there's this potential for things to feel more carefree and fun later.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got Sun conjunct Saturn and Virgo rising. Anything else that stood out in his chart?
Yeah, well, she pointed out that he has Uranus conjunct the moon.
Uranus conjunct the moon. Now, Uranus, that's like the planet of upheaval, right?
Yeah, sudden change, innovation.
So somebody who maybe likes to shake things up a bit.
Exactly, yeah. And the moon represents our emotions and intuition.
Gotcha.
So she was saying that this combination suggests he has a really powerful intuitive streak.
Okay.
And a natural inclination to kind of challenge the status quo.
I see.
Particularly in areas that are ruled by Libra, because that's the sign that Uranus is in for him.
Oh, so it's not just Uranus. It's like the specific placement of Uranus.
Exactly. So for him, Libra is all about the mind, how we relate to others.
Oh, okay.
So it suggests that he's not afraid to think differently, and he might have these like flashes of insight,
Uh-huh.
particularly when it comes to like intellectual or social issues.
So like innovative thinking about relationships.
Yes, maybe. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm.
So it sounds like he's got this really fascinating mix of like a strong drive,
Right.
this practical Virgo energy,
Yeah,
and then these bursts of like unconventional thinking.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so how does this all connect to the bigger picture of like what she talks about?
Well, she then starts to move into this idea of planetary cycles and how they affect us.
Okay.
And she talks about the Saturn return.
The Saturn return, that's a big one.
Yeah, you've probably heard of that.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so she describes it as this like cosmic checkpoint.
A checkpoint.
Yeah, that happens roughly every 29 to 30 years.
Oh, so it's tied to the cycle of Saturn.
Exactly, yeah. So it's when Saturn returns to the exact spot that it was in when you were born.
Wow. So that's a pretty rare occurrence of a person's life to experience that a couple of times?
Yeah, and she emphasizes that this is often a time of like major life events
Okay.
related to your sense of purpose and your destiny.
Oh, so this is when things really start to shift.
Yeah, and it's like the universe is asking you, are you on the path that's truly
I
yours?
see.
Yeah.
So a time for reflection and maybe a little course correction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for Alex, his first Saturn return was around 2004, 2005.
Okay.
And that coincided with the launch of his film career.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's a pretty,
A real concrete example.
yeah, concrete example of this idea of like Saturn pushing us toward our true calling.
Right. So it's like a confirmation that he's on the right path.
Yeah, if you're aligned with it, it can feel like stepping into your power.
Okay.
But if not, it can bring some challenges that are meant to like nudge you back on course.
Oh, so it's not always easy,
No, not always easy.
but it's always purposeful.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then she also mentions Saturn 7-year cycles.
7-year cycle.
Yeah, so she's suggesting that we tend to see these like significant shifts roughly every 7 years.
So it's not just the Saturn return, it's these smaller cycles within that?
Right.
Okay.
And Alex himself notes that he's had like major life changes roughly every decade,
Oh, wow. So that lines up pretty well.
which kind of aligns with this broader influence of Saturn over time.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, and then just to add another layer to it, she also talks about Jupiter's transit in 2024 and early 2025.
Okay, Jupiter. So what was happening with Jupiter during that time?
She highlighted that as a period of expansion and opportunity for Alex's career.
Oh, wow. So like things were really taking out for him professionally.
Yeah, it shows how these different planetary movements can like kind of weave together in our lives.
Right. It's all interconnected.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just looking at one planet in isolation, it's how they're all interacting.
Right.
Okay, so, we often see astrology in like magazines and stuff.
Right.
How does what Silverman's talking about differ from that?
Yeah, well, this is where she makes a really important distinction between like in-depth astrological analysis by a trained astrologer
Okay.
and what you might find in your typical like, sun sign horoscope.
In a magazine or something.
Yeah. She argues that, a detailed analysis can tap into like deeper karmic patterns, the specific timing of major events, your unique life purpose.
Okay, so it's way more personalized.
Way more personalized. Yeah, it's all based on your individual birth chart.
Gotcha.
Whereas those like magazine horoscope, they're just incredibly broad strokes
Right.
based on just your sun sign, which is one small piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
It's like comparing, a detailed medical diagnosis to just a general wellness tip.
I see. Yeah, you're not going to get the full picture from that.
Exactly.
Okay, so we talked about how astrology has been around for thousands of years.
Right.
Like 4,000 years. Why do you think it's endured for so long?
Well, Silverman believes that this longevity suggests there's some kind of profound intelligence behind it.
Okay.
It's not just some random.
Like a pad.
Yeah, exactly. It's resonated across cultures and for such a long time.
Right.
She even hints at this idea that astrology is like a secret blueprint
A secret blueprint.
that can help us understand our place and our purpose
Okay.
in a complex world.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about one of the big concepts she discusses, which is this shift from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age.
Right.
Now, these are like huge long-term cycles.
Yeah, really massive.
Okay.
And she explains that the Piscean age, which roughly coincided with the rise of Christianity,
Okay.
was characterized by an emphasis on established religions, hierarchies.
Rules?
Yeah, strict rules.
Okay.
And then the Aquarian age, which she believes began around the 1960s, signifies a move towards like breaking down those old structures.
Okay.
More focus on individuality, innovation.
A belief in alternate realities.
Yeah, it's like a shift from those collective belief systems
Right.
to more individualistic and technology-driven approaches.
That makes sense with the rise of the internet and everything.
Exactly.
So it's like a democratization of information.
Right.
Yeah.
And this transition isn't going to be subtle. She highlighted Pluto entering Aquarius in November 2025
Okay.
as marking the beginning of another 2100-year era
Wow, that's a huge shift.
where the old ways of doing things just won't work anymore.
So a pretty significant turning point for humanity.
Yeah, she anticipates that this transition is going to be uncomfortable,
Okay.
but ultimately necessary for our collective evolution.
So like growing pains.
Yeah, and it really mirrors a lot of the like upheaval and change that we're seeing globally right now.
Yeah, it does feel like we're in a time of huge transition.
Right.
Okay, so what are her predictions specifically for humanity's future between 2025 and 2030?
Okay, well, she uses a really interesting analogy to describe this period.
What's that?
She compares it to childbirth.
Childbirth.
Yes.
Okay.
So what might seem like chaos and pain and upheaval is actually a necessary
Like
process.
birthing something new.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And she emphasizes the importance of what she calls wisdom keepers.
Wisdom keepers.
Yeah, so these are individuals who are more conscious and aware
I see.
to kind of remain grounded during this time and trust that there's this larger intelligent force.
Guiding the transformation.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom. There's
No.
a purpose behind it.
Right. And the crucial thing is that we move beyond this like self-focused perspective,
Okay.
what she calls the me zone.
The me zone.
Yeah, and recognize that the discomfort of this transition is actually like a prerequisite for real widespread change.
I see. So we have to go through the discomfort to get to the other side.
Yeah.
Okay.
She suggests that 2024 might be the last year where this like kind of unconsciousness prevails
Okay.
on a broader scale.
The last hurrah.
Yeah, and then from 2025 onward, particularly with Saturn moving into Aries,
Oh, Saturn and Aries.
she predicts a more direct and intense confrontation with the challenges that we face.
Individually and collectively.
Yeah, both.
Okay, so buckle up.
Yeah, basically.
So how do we navigate this time? I mean, does it sound like it's going to be pretty bumpy?
Right. Well, she offers some really practical guidance based on this ancient concept of the four elements.
The four elements. Okay, so like earth, air, fire, water.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And she uses this as a framework for how to navigate the upcoming shifts.
Okay, I like that it's like a tangible framework that
Yeah.
we could use.
Right.
Okay, so let's break it down. What does she say about each element?
Okay, so for water, which represents our emotions,
Okay, water, emotion.
she stresses the importance of cultivating stillness.
Stillness, okay.
Yeah, through practices like meditation, spending time in nature.
So calming the nervous system down.
Exactly. Yeah, anything that kind of like soothes your nervous system.
Okay.
She makes this really interesting point about how our collective emotional body is kind of toxic right now.
Toxic, wow.
Yeah, because there's this like societal tendency to suppress vulnerability.
Oh, yeah, we're not supposed to show our emotions too
Yes,
much.
exactly.
Okay.
So for her, like prioritizing emotional well-being, finding healthy ways to process your feelings
Is really key.
is really key during this time.
Okay, so water taking care of our emotions.
Right.
What about air?
Okay, so air represents the mind and communication.
Okay, air-mind communication.
Yeah, and her guidance with air is all about the power of our words and our thoughts.
Okay,
So she emphasizes speaking truth
truth.
with intention and kindness.
Okay, so being mindful of how we communicate.
Exactly, and also being mindful of our internal self-talk.
Right, because that could be so negative sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
Okay,
So the positive expression of air is about clear, honest communication
gotcha.
that fosters connection and understanding.
So choose your words wisely.
Yeah.
Okay, what about earth?
Okay, so earth represents practicality and grounding.
Okay, earth, practicality, grounding.
And actually, she notes that Alex, the host of the podcast, doesn't have any earth in his chart.
Oh, really? No earth. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
But her advice here is really crucial, even if you do have earth in your chart.
okay.
She says focus on getting organized, managing your finances responsibly, creating stability in your physical environment.
Okay, so like the practical things in life.
Exactly, yeah. And if earth is a weaker element for you, she suggests like actively seeking support
Oh,
to
okay.
these practical areas.
So if you're not good at managing money or
Right.
getting organized, get somebody to help you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So the balanced expression of earth is about taking responsible action and creating a solid foundation,
Okay,
but without becoming rigid or controlling.
right, because earth can also be a little bit too stuck sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we got water, deal earth. What about fire?
Okay, so fire is the element of passion, enthusiasm, or life force.
Okay, fire, passion, the thing that drives us forward.
Exactly.
Okay.
But she cautions that fire can become destructive if it's unchecked.
Right.
You know, it can lead to things like addiction or excessive drama.
Oh, yeah.
So the higher expression of fire, she suggests, is about using that passionate energy for spiritual growth,
Okay.
teaching, inspiring others.
So channeling that fire in a positive direction.
Right.
Okay.
So for you, it's like embrace your passions, find what lights
Yeah,
you up.
but channel that energy constructively.
Exactly, yeah.
Now we can't talk about astrology without talking about karma.
Right.
So how does Silverman explain karma and how it shows up in a birth chart?
Well, she says that karmic themes often manifest as areas of tension or challenge within the chart.
Okay.
So those aspects that require like conscious effort to navigate.
So like the things we have to work through
Yeah,
in
exactly.
this lifetime.
And for Alex, she pointed to Pluto squaring his sun as a potential karmic pattern related to his ego.
Okay, Pluto squaring the sun.
Yeah, and she suggested that this might stem from past experiences of either being humiliated or wielding power in a way that led to negative consequences.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like the universe is providing these opportunities in this lifetime to learn humility.
Right, to balance out those past actions.
Exactly.
Okay.
But karma is not all about challenges, right?
Right.
It can also manifest in positive ways.
Okay.
She mentions that karma can also show up as like innate talents
Oh, okay.
or strong inclinations towards certain things from a young age.
Like you're just naturally good at something.
Yeah, almost like carrying over skills or memories from past lifetimes,
Interesting.
which she refers to as recapitulation.
Recapitulation.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if you find yourself like naturally gifted in a particular area, it could be a manifestation of positive karma.
So it's not all bad.
Right.
Okay, so to wrap up, what were Debra Silverman's main predictions for that 2025 to 2030 window?
Well, she was pretty direct about it. She said that the period between 2025 and 2027 is likely to be very, very bumpy.
Bumpy. Okay.
Yeah, characterized by, significant decisions and shifts.
So big changes.
Yeah, both on a personal and global level.
Okay.
And she believes that we're already seeing the beginnings of this in current world events.
Right? It does feel like things are kind of escalating right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so given that it's going to be bumpy, what was her main advice for getting through it?
Well, she really emphasized taking personal responsibility for your own well-being.
Okay.
Striving to be a healing agent within your own sphere of influence.
So like focusing on what you can control.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And then also cultivating inner stability by consciously working with those 4 elements that we talked about.
Right, so like a holistic approach to navigating this time.
Yeah, it's about building resilience from the inside out.
To deal with all the external craziness.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about astrology, but the energetic basis of it is something that people always question.
Right.
Like, how can planets actually influence us?
Yeah.
What does Silverman say about that?
So she draws a parallel to the moon's undeniable effect on tides
Okay,
and even on human behavior,
right.
and suggests that there's a similar kind of electromagnetic or energetic field at play between the planets.
I see. So it's like an unseen force.
Yeah.
That's connecting everything.
Exactly. And she acknowledges that, this isn't easily proven through conventional scientific methods.
Right?
But she argues that the consistent patterns and insights revealed through accurate astrological readings.
Offer evidence that it's real?
Yeah, she sees it as a complex, interconnected system, like a beautiful dance within our solar system.
Well, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so to kind of bring it all together, what were some of the key takeaways from our deep dive into Debra Silverman's insights?
Well, first of all, be prepared for a significant period of transition, particularly between 2025 and 2027,
Okay.
which is predicted to be challenging, but ultimately a catalyst for growth as we move into this Aquarian age.
Right. So challenges, but also opportunities.
Exactly. And then the practical takeaway is to really focus on understanding and balancing the 4 elements within yourself.
Right. So tending to your emotional well-being, communicating clearly and mindfully,
Yeah.
staying grounded and organized, and then channeling your passions constructively. So it's about self-awareness and taking action.
Right. And ultimately, Silverman's perspective offers this sense that there's a larger cosmic plan unfolding.
Okay.
There's a higher intelligence at play.
Which can hopefully give us some comfort during this time.
Yeah, and reduce some of the anxiety around the changes that we're witnessing.
Right, because it can feel really overwhelming.
Totally.
Okay, so a question for our listeners to ponder.
Okay.
Which of these 4 elements feels most prominent in your life right now?
Ooh.
Or maybe the one that you tend to neglect?
Yeah.
And how might intentionally focusing on bringing more balance to that specific element shift your experience and your ability to navigate the coming years?
That's a good one.
So think about your own internal operating system
Yeah.
and where it might need some fine-tuning during this time of significant change.
I love it.
And if you're interested in exploring Debra Silverman's work further, her book is titled The Missing Element.
Okay.
And she's active on social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok under Debra Silverman Astrology.
Awesome. Well, this has been a really fascinating and thought-provoking deep dive.
It has.
Thanks for joining us.